Joanna Leigh Simon lives and works in Philadelphia as a media director for a small production company. She is in her final semester of the Rosemont MFA and working on her thesis, a collection of prose. Her writing has appeared in Laurel Moon, Glasses, Splice Today, Broad Magazine, and on Public Radio International. Please welcome Joanna Leigh Simon.
So my dad's here. And earlier we were talking on the phone and he was like deciding whether or not he was gonna come, and I was like, you don't have to come, it's fine. And he was like, well, I want to, but like, are you gonna say anything that's gonna make me squirm? And I was like, well, no, but like the fact that I want to be a writer, like, should. But he came, so I crossed out a bunch of stuff, and hopefully you'll be fine. But they said that they needed nonfiction, so I have nonfiction. The first piece I think some of you have read, and I think some of you know one or both of the characters, so that's exciting for you. And it's called Pizza Night. Van and I have pizza once a week. It's just something we do. Around 6, I'll start to ask him what he wants on his, which is just a formality because he always eats the same, plain with cheese. In fact, he never even answers me when I ask him, Van, what do you want on your pizza, buddy? Babe, you want plain? He ignores me and continues to talk himself through his pirate game. He's pushing a plastic ship across the carpet, muttering things. He says, drop the mainsail. He says, heave ho. I pick up the phone. Babe, you want plain? I start to dial. He doesn't care about the pizza until it's on his plate. I get that. But one day, he will have preferences. And when that day comes, I want to be in the habit of asking him what he wants. We walk a couple blocks to the pizza shop. I make him hold my hand, 80% for safety and 20% because of the way it makes me feel. He never objects. One day, I know he will. He asks me questions, usually about geography. What town are we in? Where is the city? His world consists of several locations with nothing in between them. Ardmore, the city, the beach, and Disney World. At the pizza shop, Tony says, there's my handsome boy. Van jumps up on a chair and peers over the ledge into the prep area. I say hi to Tony. One medium plain, right? Tony swoops around to the counter with the box. He sets it down. You got skinnier. He's not wrong, but this shocks me. Something about the pizza guy noticing anything about my appearance sort of irritates me. I smile hugely though and cast my eyes down and shrug and say, yeah, a little bit. That's the protocol. He's on the other side of the counter punching the register. Van puts his little fingers on the counter and stares at the pizza box. I open it up so he can see inside. He nods his approval of the pie and then presses his head against the counter like he's tempering a migraine. I think that's just something kids do. They want to touch things. I would like to feel the feeling of the cool plastic counter against my forehead too. I imagine it would feel nice and grounding. I imagine pressing my head into the counter so hard that little ridges form in my skin from the act. You got skinnier and tan. What you doing, eh? Tony leans one forearm on the counter and wipes his hands with a rag. Without thinking, I say, I'm in love. I don't know where that came from. I blush. I scoop Van up around his stomach and swing him from side to side a little. He giggles. In love, Tony bursts. She's in love and she's getting tan and skinny and more blonde. Bella, Bella. I cough and then I say, I'm just kidding. This is the only man in my life. I squeeze Van's armpits. Tony looks disappointed. I hand Van $2 bills and I pick the tip jar off the counter and bring it down to him as he puts them in like always. And I say, thanks, Tony. And in one hand I hold the pizza box and I reach the other towards Van, who's already heading out the door, and I say, hold my hand. And he says nothing, but he reaches back and grabs it. And this is another piece, which is also nonfiction, although I don't see Richard in this room. I see some of Richard's minions. So I don't know. We might have to discuss later, like the line and where it gets drawn. There's no title. It's a really new piece. Nobody's heard it before. It is not genetic. Unlike talking too much and too loudly, unlike a penchant for lively argument or a love of large breed dogs, buccoglossal syndrome is not a family affliction. It has never touched the tongue, and yes, this is a story that takes place in the mouth of my father or my mother, or for that matter, anyone I know, at least that I know of. It is a disease of which, in my mind, I am the only known sufferer, although an allergist, psychiatrist, family doctor, and Wikipedia tell me there are others out there. Physically, this is what we're dealing with. Buccoglossal, naturally from the Latin for mouth and tongue, is the oral variety of tardive dyskinesia, which is a form of dyskinesia, which is an umbrella term that hangs over neurological movement disorders in the same family as Parkinson's, resulting in involuntary repetitive body movements. This one branded as tardive because the onset is slow and creeping, unlike its more lively cousin, the flashier syndrome, Tourette's. With BG, as I've affectionately abbreviated it, it's just the tongue and jaw that are affected. From time to time, and at any time, the nervous system plays hide and seek with the muscles in the area, turning off functionality and feeling on a whim. You end up with a numbness, a tautness, a straining in the tongue. Speaking is made difficult, taste rendered non-existent. The lips constantly want to pucker. At the beginning, I even drooled a little bit, quickly swiping at the corners of my lips with my fingertip. What causes it? Drug side effects, mostly. The exact mechanism of the disease remains largely unknown. The working theory, in my case, is dopamine supersensitivity in the nigro-striatal pathway, with the D2 dopamine receptor being most affected. I cannot explain this to you. I can show you the piece of paper where I have it written down, which I keep in a drawer for when I need to remember the name of these my enemies, of the chemicals and receptors throwing such a wild party in my brain. I am a mouth. It is what defines me. Talking, eating, big lips, and a big diastematic smile. A good kisser, go on, ask someone. More than any other part of my body, I feel like my mouth takes care of business. Where it leads, I usually follow. No questions. It's why I write, so that I can put what I have to say down on paper and give it away, and then be saying it over and over and over again. But for the past 8 years, every few weeks, my mouth goes dark and unfeeling, except for occasional momentary strains, like Charlie horses in the back of the tongue, always followed by a pressure in the upper molars, and a sigh. In 1924, a 20-year-old stowaway disembarked on U.S. soil off a ship from the Netherlands. Willem de Kooning, an abstract expressionist of the New York School, would come to be known for his representational yet furtively colorful and scratchy paintings of ordinary things, mostly men and women. In college, I worked at the campus art museum. It had been my dream job from the moment I got there. I was majoring in art history, and everyone knew that a job as a museum guide was cushy. $8 an hour to sit in the gallery and read while visitors trickled in and out. Make yourself available to answer questions about the work. This is a Cézanne. It's tiny. If you want to see a better one, go to France. This is a Liechtenstein. Yes, it looks like a comic book. Please don't touch it. Thank you. It was the winter of my sophomore year when the BG first cropped up. I spent the morning in class smacking my lips and wiggling my tongue around, trying to shake out a strange numbness I'd woken up with that morning. I couldn't taste my coffee. I tried chewing a stick of gum. It was hard to pay attention in the dark lecture hall, slides clicking across the screen. I prodded my tongue with my fingers in the dark. It was stiff like a dead snail. I tried gargling in the hall by the water fountain, working out my mouth, trying to wake it up. That night at dinner, the problem still hadn't disappeared and my appetite was totally gone, but I couldn't even be excited about that. I tried to explain my predicament to my friends. It's like, you know that feeling right before you puke and your tongue gets all stiff and you start to gag and salivate? It's just like, felt like that all day. Ew, Joanna. Gross. The museum exhibition that season was a fanciful installation by a Swiss artist named John Armlader. He built a giant scaffolding in the middle of the main gallery and strung it up with fake tropical plants, disco balls, and Christmas lights. Art. Boomboxes playing traditional Hawaiian music, Malay chants, and the strumming of ukuleles, ipihakis, and ili'ilis were hidden in the plastic hibiscus. Every morning when we opened the museum, the guide assigned to the main gallery would have to scale the scaffolding and turn on the music. At night, we'd have to shimmy back up and turn it off. In the adjacent gallery that month was the customary display of works from the museum's permanent collection. I preferred to be stationed in here. In the small gallery, I was alone with a few traditional paintings and some slightly abstract ones. A memorable favorite of mine from the collection was out at the time, one of de Kooning's women. I had written a term paper on the work the year before, a visual analysis, which is the foundation paper written for all classes in art history. You describe the work inch by inch using whatever words you've got, and then briefly address the artist's possible motivations, statements, and circumstances in order to come to some conclusion about the meaning of it all. Here, a brief excerpt from that paper. In de Kooning's Woman 5, a painting in oil on canvas measuring approximately 3 feet by 5, the artist has rendered a female figure, broad of shoulders and small of head, with large eyes that take up approximately half of her face and large teeth set in a mouth lifted up at the corners, but it's unclear whether in a grimace or a smile. The second day of the tongue problem was well underway. It was the afternoon, and I was seated on the small stool reserved for guides in the gallery. It was raining outside, I remember, because I could hear it falling on the skylight, and I was wearing galoshes that squeaked a little on the polished wood floors. I was drinking scalding hot tea in an effort to shock my tongue awake. This was before the doctors I would consult and the articles I would read, before I had any of the scant understanding of BG that I now possess. All I had then was frustration and scorn. This better not be a birth control side effect, I thought, because he is not worth it. This better not be from smoking, I thought, because smoking is cool and I want to keep doing it. When no one was in the gallery, I would pull on my tongue with my fingers, trying to massage the muscle like a sore tennis player or a boxer midway through a trying fight. Come on! I spoke to it like an insolent child. What if it stays like this forever? I let myself think for a minute, becoming frightened. The senior gallery guide popped her head into the gallery about 20 minutes to closing time. There's no one here, she said. I'm going to head out. Do you mind closing up? I didn't mind. The closing of the museum was, and to this day remains, a most sacred ritual that I would never pass up the opportunity to perform. Lock up all the gallery doors, turn off the lights, lock the elevator, turn off the computer at the front desk, turn off the fountain by flipping a lever in the electrical closet, shut off any and all electronics in use by the exhibitions. I walked into the main gallery, my boots squeaking. I pulled myself up onto the wooden structure and, pushing the large plastic palm fronds aside, turned off the boom boxes and their tinkling tunes one by one. As the music died down gradually, the silence of the empty museum became bigger, and finally, as I turned off the last forlorn-sounding Tiki Umi guitar solo, I was alone in the quiet with only the foreign sensation of a missing tongue in my mouth. The feeling had become massive. I hadn't really eaten for 2 days. I was scared and uncomfortable and didn't know what I was going to do next. But I looked so normal on the outside, no one could see what was wrong. I would have to collect my books in my bag from the office and walk down the museum steps like I did every day and walk back to my room and worry about what was breaking down inside my face. Sometimes now I still think about doing it, what I did that night. I go to the PMA or the Barnes or Mocha on a long weekend, and I drift around looking at the artworks, which due to that pesky and worthless fine arts bachelor's I know a little something about. I attach onto the tale of a tour moving through the galleries and listen to the guide tell the Greek myths that the paintings depict, or talk about so-and-so's use of line, color, and such. I peel off the tours and go into the smaller galleries. I encircle Brancusis on their pedestals, Deschamps toilets on plaster shelves. I peek for guards, alarm systems, and cameras, the types of security devices that a small New England college museum could luckily not afford. As I walked slowly from the big gallery back through the halls and into the room I'd been posted in before, I heard nothing but the squeak of my shoes and the drizzle on the roof glass. The fountain, which usually echoed through the galleries, was off. The buzz of the halogens was silenced as I had turned off all the lights except the one in the doorway, the last switch to flick when I left. It smelled like plaster and dust and books tinged with citrus from some cleaning agent. I loved the thought of the museum at night, everything completely still until a whirring air conditioner might set one of Armlater's fake plants aflutter. De Kooning once said, "The attitude that nature is chaotic and that the artist puts order into it is a very absurd point of view. I think that all we can hope for is to put some order into ourselves." I stepped into the small gallery and in the dim light could make out the de Kooning staring at me. What precipitated my next action I can't say. Perhaps you can if you can see it coming. I never mentioned it to any of the doctors who I would later seek out to help me with my problem, only occasionally and self-deprecatingly to friends, who mostly laugh. One time after retelling this story, a good friend nodded solemnly and said, "I get it, I totally get it. It's no weirder to me than Mexican grandmothers who kiss their little plastic Jesuses every day." I walked up to the painting, flush against the wall, the slight raised lines of colorful oil paint poking up from the canvas. I breathed on it slightly, like coming in for a first kiss. I stuck out my stiff, dead tongue, and I licked it. I licked the de Kooning. Maybe 3 times, gently, so as not to disturb the oil paint, which, as a student of fine art, I had learned never really fully dries.